Apa yang terlintas di pikiran wanita Kristen Amerika ketika mendengar kata Islam? Apakah prasangka, ketakutan, atau justru keingintahuan di luar berita media utamanya?
As a revert Muslim woman born and raised in America as a Christian, I'm going to share with you all the reasons why I giggle when I hear people say that Islam oppresses women. And we're going to use all of the number one discussed topics, starting with that a woman's opinion is equal to half of a man's. So this is in relation to finance or business or trade or what have you, along those lines, right? And this was also made in 7th century Arabia, when the women, their sole priority was to raise the children, educate the children, feed them breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, make sure their hygiene is taken care of, making sure they're well taken care of, making the house a home, tending to her husband. Why would a woman ever tend to her husband? Well, because in 7th century Arabia, the husband's job was to provide, to pay for the home, right? To go into battle when it was necessary. Because back then, well, war was around the corner at any time. So the men dealt with the men, and the women were the rocks of society, raising the children and tending to the home. Now, as I'm sure most mothers can understand this concept, says that there can either be 2 male witnesses or there can be 1 male witness and 2 female witnesses, so that if one female forgets, the other female can remind her. Now, you're probably thinking, what, do they think women are airheads? No. As a mother, tending to the home and raising children, they were busy. They had a lot going on. Yeah, any mothers, especially stay-at-home mothers, will know exactly what I'm talking about. So the chances of them forgetting something that was not a part of their responsibility in the first place is kind of high compared to a man whose primary responsibility and role in 7th century Arabia was to do just that. Next concept is there's another part in the Quran talking about how a man can strike his wife after disagreements, blah, blah, blah. I believe it's in Hadith where it fully explains this, and it basically states that it's the equivalent to striking your woman with a toothbrush, okay? Kind of like a snap out of it type shit, all right? And let's not act like some of you women don't like to be smacked around a little bit. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, never hit his wives. He was very kind to his wives and treated them with the utmost respect. In fact, I don't think a lot of people realize this, but a lot of his wives were actually widows or running from persecution, and that's why he married them, to give them safety. Obviously, if Muslims follow Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, in the way he acted, it's kind of a given that you don't actually abuse your wife. Hijab's the next one. How women are forced to be modest. Well, men are too, in case you didn't know this. Men also have a dress code. And they're told that if they see a woman, no matter what she's wearing, even she could be butt naked, okay? Butt naked. He is to look away. And Allah sees everything, so he will know if the man didn't look away when he was tempted by something. I don't know about you, but when I take my child to the water park that's made for children, I would much prefer not to see a woman's tickle bitties hanging out of her skimpy little bikini top. Or if I take her to the park, I would much prefer not to see a woman with her whole ass out. True story. When you hear of these countries like Iran, when they force modesty, just take a step back and think, why is it such a problem not to allow people to walk around half fucking naked? Back before I was Muslim and I just dressed trendy and however I wanted, I was treated so very differently than how I'm treated now when I dress more modestly out in public. I used to get the dirtiest DMs ever before becoming Muslim and having a Muslim following. And now when I get messages from men, it's refreshing because they're so kind. Some of them have even asked to get to know me for marriage, because that's a value of Islam. That's what they want, a wife. They want wives and husbands. They want marriage and family. Remember when that used to be a core value of Americans back in the day, right? And it's not anymore. Hookup culture? What is that? What is that? Not in Islam. So, trust me, from someone who's lived both lives, the grass is not always greener on the other side. And I feel like here in America, we're learning that now, considering now women have to work every single fucking day, have children, tend to the children, because men just don't have that same aspect that women do when it comes to raising kids, that maternal instinct in us. They don't have it. So then we come home and we tend to the children and tend to the house, all while working a fucking job every day. You see your coworkers more than you see your own children. You know your coworkers more than you know your own husband. And that's the life we live here now. So yes, I giggle when I hear people say that Islam is just not compatible with the West. Because they're kind of right. Assalamu alaikum.
Wanita Muslim Amerika menerangkan perbedaan antara Islam dan Kristen soal beramal.
So I was raised Christian, and I am now Muslim. One of the reasons I was drawn to Islam is a slight but important distinction between the two faith traditions. In the Bible, human beings are commanded to have mastery and dominion over the earth and non-human life. In the Quran, there is a similar command with a slight shift. We are commanded to be Khalifa, stewards of the earth and non-human life and each other. And this brings it from dominion to caretaking. And this is reflected in the Islamic obligation for charity. So it is a pillar in Islam to pay charity. But, and this distinction is important too, unlike in Christianity, where I was ordered to pay tithing, from the time I earned any income at all, I started working at 13, and 10% of my income would go directly to the church, which functioned like a corporation, and my tithing functioned like a tax. In Islam, it's completely different. We don't pay to a centralized bureaucracy. We pay charity directly to the individual that needs it. I have an individual in mind today, and I would like my Muslim following to please contribute something. She is a revert sister. She is struggling very much to escape an incredibly abusive marriage and sustain herself and her 2 children. And so, whatever you can give, please do. This is her and her children. Her name is Paige, and the link is in my bio.
Seorang ateis memutuskan membaca Al-Quran untuk pertama kalinya, memulai perjalanan tak terelakkan menuju Islam.
Atheist reading the Quran for the very first time. I have been thinking a lot about life and religion and, the purpose of why we're here at the moment. And I always heard that people believing in Islam said that in the Quran there are a lot of things written that back in the day people could have not known, even scientific facts. And that's one of the most convincing arguments aside from the pure faith that you grow up with and the belief in God, but just if you read the book, that the book itself is supposed to convince you. That's why I want to give it a shot and read it myself, just to see what's in there, what it says, and how I will feel once I read it. Maybe it will have a certain effect on me, maybe it won't, I don't know. I'm really just curious. I approach it with an open mind, and I just want to know what it is. As I don't speak Arabic, I will be reading the English translation. At the moment, I'm gonna be reading from an app on my computer or phone. And I was told that the surahs are ordered in length, with the shortest ones being the last surahs. So that's why I will be starting from the back to make it easier for me to start the whole process and approach this. And that's why we will start with the shortest one today. There are 114 surahs, which is, from my understanding, like a larger chapter in that sense. But it can have multiple subgroups, verses in it. And I will be reading 114 today, An-Nas, which is mankind. Okay, here it goes. Say, O Prophet, I seek refuge in the Lord of humankind, the Master of humankind, the God of humankind, from the evil of the lurking whisperer, who whispers into the hearts of humankind, from among jinn and humankind. First, I find it interesting that it calls God, Allah, the Lord, the Master, and the God, because Lord is used a lot in Christianity, as far as I know. Master is a very interesting word, because in discussions online, I always also heard that in Christianity you say people are God's children, whereas in Islam you say we are His servants, and that's a very different type of phrasing the situation, I guess. So I find this interesting. I feel like Master really underlines that view. Further, when it says, from the evil of the lurking whisperer who whispers into the hearts of humankind, I assume they talk about Satan, the devil, or however it's called, to like try to make people do or act in a worse way than they would by themselves. I know somewhat that Jinn is like, in my sense, a mystical creature, like not like a ghost, but like creatures that we cannot see, that have different powers, that live in somewhat of like a parallel universe, and I'm not 100% sure if they are good or bad for humans, but I feel like it says that the devil can have an influence on both spheres in some sense. So that's the first one. That's as much as I understood from it. Let's see how the next ones go. As you just saw, I am just trying to interpret from what I understand of it, but obviously I'm very aware that I'm missing a lot of context. This is the first time I'm reading it, so in case I misinterpret something, please feel free to correct me in the comments, let me know, please be nice. I'm not trying to say anything in a bad way. I'm just trying to show what I understand from it. And I would be very curious to hear what you think, or if I made any mistakes in interpreting